the most fundamental aspect of the human species is our interdependence on one another. And out of that can develop a healthy independence. The existentialists had it all wrong. We're born alone and die alone. Who was ever born alone? There's a way to think about the individual going through life, having relationships, as opposed to we are inherent relational, and out of that comes the ability to be independent.
What a truth that is, that we are literally born in interdependence. It seems to me it's a sort of yin and yang thing, right? Where it's the duality. We must develop a self, we must develop a sense of who we are, but not be too focused on it, but not be beating ourselves up either, but a sense of that, and then a sense of others as well. There's a dynamic equilibrium to be aimed at in healthy relationships. Welcome back, everybody. I'm your host, Greg McKeown, and today I have a guest I'm so pleased to be having a conversation with. This is Bill Doherty. He's had the most remarkable life. He's going to correct me where I get this wrong, but I understand began life in the ministry, shifted from that into family social work, felt an inflection point, a transition point, and then in 2016 put his significant competence and capability into starting Braver Angels, which is an institution really now that is trying to foster the depolarization of conversation, and not in some general way, but by bringing together reds and blues, as they're referred to in Braver Angels, and now other groups as well, but in person, face-to-face, not screaming at each other on social media, not assuming the worst about each other, but getting trained in how to have these conversations. It's so vital because I'm not sure we ever really had these skills in abundance at any point, but it's certainly true that whatever we had has been strained through a series of different mechanisms, not least of all through social media, and its, let's say, polarization profiteers who seem to gain as the rest of us lose our ability to talk to each other face to face, and is doing great work with great momentum. So it's with great pleasure that I have you on the podcast today. Thank you, Bill. Thanks for joining us.
It's great to be here. I'm all enthusiastic about all this, given your very enthusiastic opening here.
Tell me, what is the underlying thread through those transitions that I've just outlined for you? What's it really about? What's your why?
Oh, thank you for that question. I think it's bringing people together, families who are estranged. My clinical specialty as a family therapist has been couples on the brink of divorce. So connecting the people through really courageous conversations. Okay, that instead of going to their own corners as family members, or we divide politically, going to our own corners and talk about the other, right, which is what most people do. People do that in families as well. Or the other way people do it is to confront each other in negative ways. That basically, you're wrong, I'm right. Why can't you see it my way? And if you don't see it my way, there's something wrong with you. So that's the confrontation approach. So either silence and talk about, or confrontation, but how for people to connect with courage and sensitivity.
I noticed as I was looking through some of your life story an interesting parallel between yours and Carl Rogers. I wonder if you're familiar with that. Is that like, oh yes, I know his story and I see myself in that story, or vice versa, or is it, old news?
Well, certainly he was one of my heroes when I started out in the counseling field. And I know that he later on got into trying to heal divides. I know he did work in the former Soviet Union, for example. And so, but feel free to, you may be more aware of what he did later on that got you to ask that question. So,
well, I mean, he started in an extremely conservative religious home, and began his journey towards the ministry himself. I don't recall how far he went with it, but shifted from that into psychotherapy, and then shifted from that into really not just academic work, but the practice, the being with people. And at the time, that was sort of career suicide, and nobody recommended it to him, and strongly recommended against doing that. And this became sort of a pattern of his life. It became what he described as the highest rule of his life was to trust his personal experience, not in the sense of, well, whatever I've experienced is the truth, but that he could keep learning by observing what happened in the next interaction, and keep updating and unlearning what he used to think even 10 minutes ago, and that life could be this constant developmental process. And this is one of the reasons he was able to shift from the Freudian model. He took on Otto Rank, or Rank Otto, I can't remember now.
Otto Rank, yeah.
Otto Rank approach, which was much more to do with, what he described here and now therapy. And then, as you say, towards the end of his career, he saw that you could use the same things that he'd seen in therapy, this kind of deep empathic listening, to help small groups of people to really be able to get beyond, he wasn't using the word polarization so much, but certainly these really big divides, and bring them together. And so I just see a golden thread aligning what you've done and the journey you've been on and his. And I was curious about your own reaction to that.
Yeah, it's an admirable journey he's been on, and certainly any comparison to Carl Rogers is very honoring of me. I guess the similarity is that I have kept changing and kept shifting. So this work with Brave Angels at the broader level, really that came on after 20 years of community engagement work with lots of different groups. And how that came about was this sense that I remember reading a book, James Hillman and Ventura. It was called "We've Had 100 Years of Psychotherapy and the World's Getting Worse." And the sense that that doing something outside of the office was what I felt called to, and I got some mentors in that area. At every step of my life, I've been mentored by others who gave me a critique of the work of professionals. I'm a professional course therapist, an academic, and what I needed was help seeing that professional expertise often comes across as on top. Okay, that you have worked at a research university. Knowledge gets generated there, and then is passed on to professional practitioners, and then passed on to regular people, and who are not grateful and don't change, right? And it doesn't really affect the larger political and economic systems. And that I just felt I needed to shift to engage more with healthcare systems, educational systems, and others, to see if I could use any of the tools that I had learned, plus new ones, to make a difference at that level. And it's very humbling because it's starting all over. Taking a few tools which help but are not enough, and to engage with people as co-creators, co-producers of innovations and of work, as opposed to taking what I knew and then applying it as a top down. So we use the term professional expertise should be on tap, not on top. Okay. So that was a revolution for me. A critique of the very idea of a professional, not that professional expertise is irrelevant. Of course it's important, but it's one form of expertise among many. And that there's a skill set of engaging people in the co-creation of innovations, not just the recipients of services by professionals.
What stands out to me as you're describing that is this unspoken dominant assumption that about what it means to know something, what it means to be a professional. That idea, as you expressed it, of there being a hierarchy, an inherent hierarchy. I have it, you don't have it. My job is to give that to you, instead of the idea of I'm not one up and you're one down, and nor am I one down either. But we are going to come to this together. You have all of the knowledge of your life and your reality, and that has got to be equal to mine because we're trying to find a way this can work together and be less wrong.
Exactly.
And so I love this. It feeds into a question I wanted to ask you, which is like, what are the most common forces you see that pull couples, families, or, now in this broader question, this whole nation apart? Is it a similar idea? I know I need to assert my knowledge on you. I think I see things as they really are. Is that primary? Not just your professional training that taught you that, but a more broad thing. What are the common forces that are pulling people apart?
Well, I think in American society, a common force is hyper-individualism. That we approach so much of life in terms of what it will do for me. So in my work in marriage, I talk about the consumer marriage as a lifestyle designed to make me happy. And my spouse becomes a marital service provider, right? And I'm not happy with that. And the thing about being a consumer, which is a form of individualism, right? If I approach life that way, the consumer is not supposed to have to work very hard at things. I'm supposed to be able to get in my car and turn the thing on. Okay, and so when we approach relationships that way, primarily, what am I getting out of this? I've even heard people say with marriage, it's not the deal I thought I was signing up for. Well, it never is. It never is. Or parenting, it's never what you think you're getting. And so think of this then more broadly at the level of our society. We're so past the day when a political leader could say what John F. Kennedy said in 1961, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. It would be laughable, okay? Because we orient so much to who can provide the best service. Or like our Republican Democrat, who's going to take government off your back so you have more money in your pocket, okay? Or who's going to provide more government services? But the either way, it's are you better off with these other people providing for you? And so ultimately, the forces of individualism. They create a centripetal force that a centrifugal force of separating us, and so there's lots of research to support this. Going back to Robert Putnam's work on bowling alone, right? That we have been increasingly for 60 years or so been a society where individual self-interest, as opposed to joining and co-creating something, the individual self-interest is everything.
So now you're describing that in a certain way, but what I'm hearing is this idea of egocentricity, that we're all born with. We start oneself wide and oneself deep, and we have to, if we do develop morally develop as a person, we suddenly discover, oh, well, we're part of a greater thing, and it's not about you. It's not centered in you. It's about everybody. And then maybe beyond that, you can then move into a co-creating state where you are still confident in yourself, and there's a sort of a sense of truthfulness in yourself, but you're open also to other people. And that seems to be what you're sort of the from radical individualism, egocentricity, to, well, what can we do together? Is there a way that we can have the courage to hold on to things that we do think are true, but open ourselves to things that might be that we might only have a part of the truth about?
Exactly.
And so you see that as a thread through the work that you've done.
Yes.
What did I get wrong?
No, I think you got it. Although what I would say is that you can also flip it and say we are radically interdependent from the beginning. Where there's cells, but the cells are inside a mother's womb. Okay, and so the whole development of the embryo and so is interwoven, and so the most fundamental aspect of the human species is our interdependence on one another, and out of that can develop a healthy independence. As opposed to we are born, the existentialists had it all wrong. We're born alone and die alone. Who was ever born alone? Okay, so it's a matter of it's a both and. What you said, I completely agree with. And there's a way to think about the individual going through life, having relationships, as opposed to we are inherent relational, and out of that comes the ability to be independent.
I really love that, and what a truth that is, that we are, literally born in interdependence, and somehow it seems to me it's a sort of yin and yang thing, right? Where it's the duality. We must develop a self. We must develop a sense of who we are, but not be too focused on it, but not be beating ourselves up either. But a sense of that, and then a sense of others as well. And there's a dynamic equilibrium to be aimed at in healthy relationships. Let's not exactly shift, but I want not to miss what led you to Braver Angels. So we've sort of got a bit of this transition. You were already engaged in community work. You were, I think, you're describing a kind of humility in that process where you started to say, well, of course I really need to hear what you're doing. Of course I need to work together so that you'll teach me what's most relevant and what my research can bring to the table. And I remember Clayton Christensen saying to me, he thought that knowledge development was like a three-legged stool. He said, you've got to do the research, you've got to be teaching, and then you've got to be doing the practice. You've got to be actually doing an application with people, and that those weren't at odds with each other, as they sometimes are in academia or perceived to be, but that's a way to accelerate one's learning about the real aliveness in life, so that you're trying to get a less bad view of what's really going on and all the forces at play and so on. So
yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah,
that sounds like what you were in. Yes, go to
let me add to that.
Please.
I never had this thought before, but that people in communities are also doing research, teaching, and practice less formally. The research is less formal, but every day we're all trying to learn about the world around us. That's what the research is. And academia, we do it more formally. We're always teaching each other, and particularly, as parents, but otherwise. And then we're all practitioners. And so I see that the specialized research, teaching, and practice that I do as a professional academic coming together with the research, teaching, and practice of regular people. And that's where we can create some innovations that stick.
I love that. I really love you're acknowledging a reality, even if we don't normally think about it in those terms. And it is true. I mean, there's so many places to riff on with that, but like just among them, I was talking to somebody recently who was saying, look, I've been a mother for X number of years out of the paid workforce. Is it worth nothing now? Is our frame so linear, so narrow that all of that research, experience, teaching is just on the resume, defaults to zero? Well, that is something that happens, a kind of flattening of life's experience. But in other ways, we can flatten other people and really remove not just the humanity, which of course we are also doing, but also eliminating our learning potential.
Exactly.
For the richness in each person's uniqueness and in what they have to offer, that we're going to miss if we're in a flattening frame. Go ahead.
Exactly. One of my first projects in what I later began to call citizen healthcare was with people with diabetes. People who lived for decades with diabetes have lived knowledge.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And often are in connect with other people with that lived knowledge. And usually the physician or clinician does not have that lived knowledge. They have a particular something to offer. And I remember realizing one day that in the waiting room in a medical clinic, somebody newly diagnosed with diabetes, it just flummoxed. I mean, it just changes the world, and you have to get all this education on it, just flummoxed. There to see the diabetic educator or the doctor. And then sitting next to them is somebody who's a veteran who has lived with this for 20 years and maybe learned some really important things. And there's no way to connect them. Everybody reads their, in the old days, their magazine, now they're on their iPhone. And then they go in to see the doctor who has some specialized knowledge, but not the knowledge they have. So how do we connect people with the knowledge they have? But everybody has to be humble. So we can't glorify individual experience either, because everybody's personal experience is not always applicable to everybody else. So it's not a romanticizing of lay knowledge. Okay, there can be blind spots everywhere, and it's where we come together and we can challenge one another. Which we can pivot to the founding of Braver Angels, if you like, on that note.
Yeah, well, I mean, I suppose a way to frame that is to say, which of these turning points most reshaped the way that you see conflict and reconciliation? Was it leaving the Seminary for Family Science? Was it creating discernment counseling after discovering sort of this ambivalence in divorce cases? Was it the founder of Braver Angels? Or is that even how you think about it?
Yeah, I don't actually. It's probably all of the above.
Yes.
All of the above. But I can tell you that there's also just happenstance in life. That this is a contingency. I got into working in family medicine because I met somebody at a party who was a family doctor. Okay, it wasn't on my radar screen. I got into Braver Angels.
Yes.
A week after the 2016 presidential election, in which Donald Trump was elected, to the shock of even Donald Trump, right? Everybody was, what's the world going on? And a colleague of mine from New York City, David Blankenhorn, who I had worked with on fathering issues, marriage issues for years. He ran a nonprofit. He called, and he said he had been on the phone with another colleague of ours, David Lapp from Southwest Ohio. He previously worked in New York, and he had moved to rural Ohio, and they were talking about how people were feeling about that election in Manhattan and in South Lebanon, Ohio. In Manhattan, the world was ending. There was a funeral, about the election. In Southwest Ohio, it was Morning in America. And they decided on the spur of the moment on that call to get 10 Hillary Clinton voters and 10 Donald Trump voters together for 13 hours over a weekend in Southwest Ohio in December, like a couple weeks out, and see if they could talk with each other, not just about each other. And they called me, and I said, "Whoa, that's pretty brave. What were you thinking of doing with them?" And they said they didn't know that part, but they thought I could figure that part out. Okay. And I remember sitting at this very desk, hoping I was not free. Okay.
Really?
Yeah.
You were feeling? Is that true? Were you really thinking, "Oh, this is too What was the percentage excitement? What was the percentage fear?
Yeah, the excitement was, oh my goodness, if we could actually get people to talk with each other in some depth and get, and not just attack each other or go to their separate corners, that would be amazing. The trepidation was how to do this, particularly in this environment.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And so that's where the excitement so I remember, looking at my calendar, my own paper calendar, with ambivalence. Okay. But I was free. And it was the first time, Greg, that I felt a kind of calling for my country at that level. Okay. Like this needs to happen. And I've learned some things over the, course of my career that maybe I could put together. This could be constructive. And so it was a very powerful weekend where people, and I asked, always like therapy, ask, why did you come? Why did you come here? And I had the feeling it was going to work when people respond to that question, because they said that we have children to raise here. We have hospitals to maintain and roads to build. We can't do it if we're just fighting each other. We've just been fighting each other. We have to figure out a way to come together to make this community work. Wow.
No, there's so much already in that. Now, how did you get those first 10 Trump voters and 10 Clinton voters? Like, what was that? Because that origin matters, right? Like, nothing happens if you couldn't have got them at the table.
That's right. So it took 3 of us here. So David Blankenhorn had the inspiration on that phone call with David Lapp. David Lapp was embedded in this community, and he recruited people. So he was a conservative, a Republican who did not vote for Trump, and he knew a lot of what we call Reds. So he knew a lot of conservatives, including the county Republican chair. And so he recruited them. And then he didn't know as many Democrats, but he knew somebody who knew some. And then he went to the Democratic community county chair and just kept, assembling a group of about 20 people.
Okay, so just to be clear, so these weren't just 10 random Reds and Blues. These were people in community leadership positions. Is that
no?
Is that right?
Some were.
Some were. Some weren't.
Some were. That's
okay.
right. Some were.
Okay.
Some were not. Right.
So, but you still have these 20 people, and they all said they'd sign up. And was it like a whole day? Was the workshop a full day?
Friday night, all day Saturday, and Sunday afternoon.
Okay, so this is like a whole weekend. Yeah. So were they going to a hotel in the night, or were they just going home?
Nope.
So these were local people.
Yeah, and we didn't have the money to put everybody up. But
yeah, fair enough, sure.
Right.
And so then you have these people, and is that the first exercise you started with, the why are you here?
Yes, absolutely. Always.
That's so good. That's such a useful insight. Why are you here? And can you just be specific, tangible with us? Are you saying that you ask them just as a discussion item, hey, why are you all here? Or do you have them write it down? Or do you have them do 5 whys and then discuss it? Like, what's the method for getting at that?
Yeah. So the question is, the specific question was, why did you accept the invitation to come to this gathering? Okay.
It's good.
Right. And then I'd like to give everybody a moment to reflect on how you'd like to answer that question. And then I've actually prepared somebody on my left that I'm going to be starting with you. And I'd like you to take up to a minute. And
now, when you say you've prepared someone, you mean you've asked them in advance, or you've actually had a conversation
I just said to
with
them, just FYI.
You'll be first.
We're going to do this.
Yes.
And it's actually going to be the specifics are your name, where you live, situate yourself, and then, why you accepted the invitation, right?
Why did you accept the invitation to be here?
Why you accept the invitation. So I just prepare somebody, and we do this in our workshop, so that person isn't a deer in a headlight.
Yes.
Right. And that if you could keep it within a minute, you'll be a good role model for the rest of the group. Okay?
Yes.
So
that
matters. So a lot of attention to that detail. And then I also say, so if end of a minute, you look like you're preparing to go on a lot longer. I will just gently do this. And so could you wrap it up?
I love that. I love all of that facilitation. That's very, and so you go through to every person, those 20 people that were there, they go through
including me,
person.
including my co-facilitator. Everybody answers that.
What was your why? What did you say? Is it different than what you've said already? Is there something specific?
I said, I'm worried about my country, our country. And I wanted to see if we could talk with each other and not just about each other.
Let's just go there, even though I think we have some of the same assumptions here. I want to be explicit. So let's go a little bit. Why? Why are you afraid for our country? Why?
Yeah. Well, we are peaking out of a 40-year rise in political polarization, what social scientists call affective polarization, where we increasingly hold people in contempt who disagree with us politically, where we demonize them, where we don't understand them and don't want to understand them, and that this is tearing the fabric of our society apart at the political level. Paralysis, fighting, and it's penetrated the level of family and friendships.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I have so many things I want to riff on there. I've come up with a term for this now. I call it disunderstanding, with a D, disunderstanding, because
nice.
Misunderstanding doesn't do it justice, right? It's not that that you're missing each other. It's that you're listening with the intent to not understand, to miss the meaning of the other person. But keep going one more layer down. So, 40-year high polarization affecting families to paralysis. Why does all of that matter? Maybe it's self-evident, but just let's go one level deeper.
At the level of government, it matters because we can't get anything done. We just get paralyzed in terms of addressing some of the larger problems in our world. Whenever a problem becomes identified as red or blue, it becomes almost impossible to resolve. The environmental movement was neither red nor blue when it started in the late 60s, early 70s. Richard Nixon started the Environmental Protection Agency. Take abortion. It was neither red nor blue back in the 60s and 70s. They were pro-life Republicans or pro-choice Democrats. So it's a difficult issue for us to grasp. Gerald Ford and Betty Ford were the honorary co-chairs of Planned Parenthood. So it was possible to address some of our very difficult problems that divide us without going into our corners and wearing our tribal colors. And that's not possible now.
So what happens if we don't fix it?
Well, we get, as I said, the problems get worse. If we can't address in climate change in a way that balances the concerns of reds and blues, we can't move forward. It becomes an either or. And if one side wins for a while, they push their stuff in, the other side then undoes it. So look at how we're governing by executive order now, okay? And this is previous presidents did it as well, because Congress can't accomplish anything. The courts are very, very slow. So and then what I'm now more concerned than I was 9 years ago about is cynicism, okay? A plague on all of them. So the apparently, as much as we know about the young man who tried to assassinate President Trump, or before he was, Donald Trump, he would have tried to take out Biden as well. He wasn't ideological. So there's this growing kind of cynicism and disconnection, particularly among young men. So I see that emerging as well.
Something that you're not only touching upon, but explaining, I think, is I think to be underscored, is that as understanding approaches zero, so does everything else. Like, so sometimes I think about this as the bottleneck of everything you want in life, in a relationship, in a society, everything. If we cease to understand each other, it's like the Babel effect. you can't function anymore. You can't build a tower. You can't work together. You can't do anything. So it's not a peripheral issue. It's not like, oh, it's nice to be understanding in life. It's actually not about being understanding. It's not being understanding. It's understanding. It's actually knowing what the other person means and then being able to add what you mean. And it's in that process. It's not, you can have the same language, the same spoken vernacular, and still find a place where there's 0 degrees of meaning.
Yes.
My wife and I are sort of open about this, that we really work on communication, but we'll say that we've experienced these moments in an argument where we say, we don't even know, not only we don't know what you mean anymore, we don't even know what we mean. Like there is this phenomenon of 0 degrees of meaning, and it can happen very quickly, and it can happen even where, generally speaking, there's great communication. You can suddenly have a kind of lockdown, and so you're describing a kind of, I think that you're describing an existential threat, and you really believe it, and you think that we need to do something about it, and that all sounds a bit dire, the way that at least I'm framing it. But you're doing something about it. And so you have this first meeting, you have the why discussion, and then what? What did you do in that first meeting after that?
Well, we did an activity, an exercise that we've been doing ever since. It's a stereotypes exercise. We have each group go to a separate room and come up with the top 4 or 5 most common negative, false, exaggerated stereotypes they think the other side has of them. So if you're on the red, the conservative group, what do liberals think about us that is false, misleading, and exaggerated? Okay, and then they vote on those, they brainstorm, and then they vote on their top group. And so racist is always at the top. That the blues think conservatives are racist, that they are homophobic and xenophobic and anti-woman and don't care about poor people. Okay, everything's about business and nothing about regular people. And what blues do, they think we're arrogant and elitist, big government for its own sake, frivolous with money, don't care about that, anti-military, anti-religious. Okay, so, and we invite people to say it, right? Baby killers, right? Baby killers, right? So just put the term on it that's the worst term that you hear, and then we invite people to do 2 things. They vote on the top group with the moderator now, the facilitator. The first is correct the stereotype. If they're calling you racist, or they're calling you into big government for its own sake, what's true instead? Okay, and then the second thing is, and this is what we call the humility question: is there a kernel of truth in it? Okay, most stereotypes have some kernel of truth. And we define that as it could be true historically, it could be true of a subgroup in your, it could be a blind spot in your side, something you don't talk about very much. It could be in the heated rhetoric of public debate, your side can come across this way. And then, so we have people then address in their own group, so for example, with the red group, no, we believe in, they're saying in the equal dignity of every person, not racist. And unfortunately, there are racists among us. And the same thing with, are we against immigrants? No, we are children of immigrants. We want immigration. And it's distressing when some of our leaders bash immigrants. Okay. The same thing with the Democrats, the blues. Yes, we believe in an active, responsible government to try to create a level playing field. And as one person said, and we're better at putting in new programs than evaluating whether they're working and taking away ones that are not. We add, we don't subtract. Okay. And on abortion, we can sound insensitive to fetal life when we only talk about women's choice. And we have some activists who, so what they do then, they come back
kernel
together.
of truth. Okay, so they've got the extreme and the kernel of truth. Yes, go ahead.
Right. And then they come back together.
Yep.
And somebody from each group presents this to the other side. These are the stereotypes we think others have of us. This is what we think is true of us instead. So your best ideals. And then this is our, the kernels of truth. And then what people do is they pair up, red and blue, to answer this two-part question. What did you learn about how people on the other side see themselves? And did you see anything in common? And then the ground rules are that's all you can discuss. What did you learn about how they see themselves, which goes back to the understanding thing, Greg, right? Understanding. And then did you find anything in common? So they do that for several minutes, and then we go around the table with people sharing with the whole group.
Okay, so just that last part I want to clarify. So if you and I were having that conversation, you would be trying to find out from me, and I would be trying to find out from you how each of us see ourselves. Is that right? Was that right?
Our side. Our side.
Our side.
Yeah.
So not the stereotype view, not even the kernel of truth view, just how do you see your side?
Well, the kernel of truth, the kernel of truth is part of it.
Yes, I see.
The kernel of truth,
yes,
humanizes each side.
Yes.
Okay. And you'd be surprised when people process this exercise, which we do in our, what we call Ribley workshop. A lot of times people don't even think the other side understands the stereotypes. They think they're so clueless. Okay. That they're impressed that actually the stereotypes are actually the ones that, yeah, that's what I think of you guys. Okay. You actually know how you're perceived. Like, whoa, that's illuminating. And the fact that you think there's any, kernel of truth in it, then humanizes you.
Got it. You in effect, that is a kind of pre-state that's going on there, right? You're saying, well, you probably see us see our side like this, and here is some of the truth. I can acknowledge some of that. I can allow for some of those bits of truth to that. So suddenly you've immediately you've signaled and you've experienced each other in okay, well, there's something to get here. We can get each other because we can hear each other's restate of the extremes, and then some acknowledgement of weakness that we have, each. Okay, so I can see why that formulates already quite a different dialogue than you would normally have.
Yes, yes.
Then what?
The next exercise is a fishbowl. And a fishbowl is an old technique where you have people with some similar views in a circle in the middle of the room. And this could all be done online too. And then you have an outer circle of people in the other group. And the inner circle group are going to answer some questions, have a conversation. The outer circle's job is to listen and learn how the people in the middle see themselves, and to look for anything in common, the same two-part thing. And no interruptions, no verbal, nonverbal. We rarely get a chance to see a group who differ from us, but who are like-minded in their own conversation, where there's no eye contact, I don't have to respond, I'm just listening. Okay, listening to learn.
Okay, explain that to me though. So fishbowl, you've got the people in the middle, they're sitting facing each other or facing outwards,
in a circle.
But so looking inwards.
Internal conversation. They don't look at the outside people at all.
Got it. So let's say you've got blues in the middle, reds on the outside.
Right.
And the blues. What's the prompt? What are they to?
Well, on the outside. Well, yes. I can tell you what the prompt is in the middle.
Yes, okay, that's what I'm asking.
Questions are right. Yeah, the two questions. Why are your side's values and policies good for the country? Is the first one. The best of what you notice, good for the country. Values and policies, good for the country. And then the second question is, what are your reservations or concerns about your own side? And that's the humility question.
It's so great. And then the outside, their prompt, you already said it, but their prompt is they're not asking questions, they're just listening.
Only listen, no verbal, nonverbal response. And you're listening to learn how these people in the middle see themselves. And you're listening for anything you have in common. And then after that, you switch roles. The inside circle goes to the outside of the circle. It goes out the outside. And then the processing is the same in pairs and then the whole group. What did you learn about how people on the other side see themselves? And did you see anything in common? And so
anything in common with each other?
Yes, with me, with my side.
With myself.
With me.
Okay. Yes. Okay. So you're looking deliberately for common ground.
For common ground.
Yeah. What can I agree on here?
Yeah. So I'll give you an example where a young man in one of these I read gave one of the most beautiful statements about how free market capitalism can raise people out of poverty, can create an engine of human flourishing, and that it has done that. And then in the second question, reservation concerns, capitalism can be harsh and hard, and people can be left behind, and our side sometimes blames those people. Okay, instead of understanding that these forces don't bring everybody, all the ships don't rise, and we can have a blind eye to that. Now, if you're a liberal, if you're a blue, oh my goodness, I could talk to this young man. Okay, he's got ideals here, and he understands my concern. If I'm a blue, of the people who are left behind, the blue side. So, caring for people in the margins, wanting to open up, openness for people who have different sexual orientations, who have different ethnicities, and so on, who are often marginalized, and creating a space where everybody can feel like they have a real equal opportunity in this country. Yeah, cool. Downside, we can get so rigid in terms that everybody has to sign up for this language, these terms, and has to be completely on board. As one person said, there can be 20 things that, values and policies on my side. And if you agree on 19 of them and not the 20th, then you're out. And so one woman said, I happen to be pro-life. I'm signed up for everything, but I'm pro-life. I can't say that. I can't say that in my world, or I'm afraid I'm going to be thrown out. And so the Reds are going, yeah, I can rigidity of language and all that sort of stuff, and moralistic. This woman was saying that. Okay, can you see when people can exercise both their ideals and their humility, people gravitate towards each other.
I mean, this is so cool. And so now that's taken up. I assume we're already at least halfway into the workshop, maybe further, because this processing takes time. And then, what else? Where do you go next?
Well, later on, we have people formulate questions for each other. Now that they've listened to each other, okay, and here's an example of what I had to learn, because the first workshop. I assume that yours truly explaining the difference between a good question of curiosity and a gotcha question would be enough for people to be able to do that. Well, it wasn't.
Right.
We had people write down their questions, and then we got them together in small groups. And some of them were just, how can you live with yours? You talked about your values. How could you possibly have voted for Donald Trump? That's not a good question. And so for the next workshop, what I did was to have, now knowing how hard it is to ask questions that are questions of deepening and curiosity and not agenda questions, right? We have people go to separate rooms. They spend 20 minutes with a facilitator coming up with 4 good questions for the other side. 4 questions, okay? And those are written down, and they take a photo of them, and then they deliver the questions to the other side. And the ground rule is you can ask follow-up questions, but you can't argue back. You're trying to understand. And so then you get some really, and people in the process of generating the questions are learning. They're learning Okay. And by this point in the workshop, they're caring about each other too. For the most part, they don't for the most part want to put the other person on the spot. They want to learn something more.
Well, there's some humanity now, right? So there's a connection. There's a rehumanizing that's taken place.
Yes. And so then that's what has emerged from all of this is a day-long workshop. And that's in the day-long workshop. That's the third exercise. There's also a 3-hour version of the workshop that just has those first two, the stereotypes and the fishbowl. So we've experimented. 13 hours is too long. Okay, so we've experimented with different ones. We also have workshops where we teach people the skills. We teach them the listening skills, the how to express yourself in a way that where you try to find common ground. So we have a whole series of workshops, and we teach the skills for a classic one is called Skills for Disagreeing Better.
Yes. Now, okay, that happens to be the title of a book that's coming out. I don't know if you've worked together with her, but she's a professor from at Harvard at the Kennedy School, and I think her book coming out in March is called How to Disagree Better. Are you familiar with what I'm talking about?
No, but I love it. Yeah.
Okay, so let's get to those skills. That's so great. What are those tangible skills? We can start whichever side you want, the listener side or the speaking side. You tell us which side you want to go on first, and then let's go through Well,
let me give you the cardinal principle. We call it the prime directive.
Yeah, I love that.
Is to connect first before you disagree. Connect with the other person, what they're saying, the passion they feel for it. Try to show that you understand. And then there are specific skills like acknowledgement and paraphrasing. But the general principle is to avoid you say up, I say down, you say left, I say right, you say hot, I say cold. That's how these things go. But to connect first. So if I'm hearing you, you think that the climate change the approaches that the Democrats are taking are going to bankrupt the country. And it cause us to go down the tubes if we move too fast. Yes, that's what you're saying. Okay, so we've established that I understand what you're saying before I go on to give my view.
Okay, so okay, I'm gonna get to this tangibly. So when you say the term connect, what you're saying is a pre-state, right? Like a kind of like Rogerian. You're making the other person's point before you make your own point. You have to get them to go, yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, that's right. And including the feelings, like if somebody has strong passion about this. So it's, this is clearly a very big deal for you. Okay. And I get that.
Do they write that statement down? Do you give them a formula for the prime directive?
Yeah, that's right. So what we do in the workshop is we give them prompts. We give them we choose a topic like policing and public safety, for example. We can take a variety of topics. We give them a conservative prompt and a liberal prompt, passionately stated. Okay, so the red prompt would be this: defund the police stuff is horrible. We have too much crime. We need to emphasize policing more. I understand police can't do it all, but they're getting demoralized. And why are you guys undermining the policing and public safety? You get the blue ones saying we can't police our way out of this problem. As communities of color don't trust police because there's been so much of a history of brutality. We need more social services and blah, blah, blah. And we just cannot be putting all of our money into policing and not get to root causes. So 2 strongly worded prompts, okay? And then we ask people to choose which one is further from their own, which one would be harder to use the skills on, which one would you be tempted to just argue back? And then that's the one you write down. You write down an acknowledgement. You write down a paraphrase. What's the heart of what that person just said? Okay, paraphrase it back. And in doing that, you do not give your own view at all.
Yes. You write it down first. You have to write it down.
And then you share it in a small group so that people hear each other's and say what your thinking was as you did it. And then some people call theirs out. They read theirs out to the whole group, and the moderator has a chance to affirm and also kind of correct and help people tweak it.
Uh-huh. So then after having written your pre-state in an attempt to connect, to show that you understand the emotion and the view of the other person, and you've written it and you've crafted, and someone's even given you some feedback about it. So you've got like a little mini workshop,
That's right.
On that statement. You then, in twos, you then make that statement to the other side. You say it, and they get to acknowledge it or say, well, yes, that's pretty much what I think, or whatever, right? They acknowledge. Then?
In the workshop, no. The workshop does not have equal reds and blues. It could be any number of people. You're not in a dialogue in the workshop. Our dialogue ones are small groups, carefully facilitated. You could have 90 people in the room.
Got it. So you're just going through the exercise of crafting a pre-state. You are
right.
thinking through what it would take to get your head there, what
That's
words
right.
you would say, how you would do it, because it's so unnatural for people.
Yes, that's right.
It's like you have to craft like a vinyl record. You have to ingrain a new way of speaking, a new kind of language. And so they're doing that. So then that would be one of the exercises they're doing. Can you make a statement that the other side would go, yes, correct?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and it's interesting you use the word exactly, because that's literally like in our family, and that's the shorthand for this, is you get an exactly. Like that's like a high standard evidence of a correct restate, right? Or in this case, a pre-state, that somebody goes exactly. And that seems to be the language. There's other synonyms for exactly, but exactly seems to be the one people use. And we will sort of laugh about it together because, oh, I got an exactly out of Dad. Oh, I got an exactly out of this, each other.
That's great.
And it's a good measure. It's like it's a metric for understanding. Okay, so that would be an example of a skill. I love how much work goes into that, because in my experience, it can be, you can describe the idea quickly, but people don't know how hard it is for them to do it if they're talking about something that's jugular, emotional, they disagree about it, and so on.
Right.
It's just much harder to do. What are other skills that you teach then in that work?
Yeah. So in this, what we call this acknowledgement skill, we're also asking, as you listen, to be listening for something you agree with. Okay. Not just for what you disagree with. Okay. Because later on, when you give your own perspective, we're going to urge you to say what you agree with and what you just heard. Well, or not start to begin, but get it in there for sure. Okay. And we have a skill. I don't know if I invented this or not, but I haven't seen this very much out there. It's called a pivot skill. And when I say invented, I give it a name for something.
Yes, I understand.
And that is, if somebody is on a roll, like what we're doing with this climate change is just going to blah, 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 and they're on a roll, and you've acknowledged what they've said. They're going to repeat. They're going to say more. So you've connected, and you're not sure if there's an opportunity for you to get in.
Okay. Yes.
And so the pivot is, this is something I got some thoughts about. If you'd like to hear them, could I share my thoughts? There's different ways to, instead of just when they pause, say, well, here's what I think, to say, basically some version of, is it my turn? Or this is something I've thought about. Yeah, I got some thoughts on that. And you're looking for verbal or nonverbal signals that it's your turn. Okay.
But you're signaling that you'd like a turn.
I'd like a turn, right? But the precision of it is I'm not yet saying what my view is.
Yes.
I'm just saying I'd like a turn.
Yes.
And you have a choice point here. If somebody overrides you on that and they just keep going, you can decide not to share your perspective. You could back out of the conversation. We have different skills for how do you exit gracefully. Because if the person is signaling that they're not at all interested.
Yes, this is going to be one way.
It's going to be one way. Then you have permission. And we could say you don't have to go forward with the conversation.
Yes.
You can just say, well, I'm glad you shared. I get how strong you feel about this. And is there dinner yet? Right. Or if you get the okay, if you will, then the last skill is the perspective skill. And that's when you're going to share, but you've connected first, right? You're going to share your perspective.
Let's stay. There's a couple of things there I want to get. One is the pivot skill.
Yeah.
It sounds like this would be consistent with this. My favorite pivot skill is the phrase. Although this is slightly different because it's not, hey, it's my turn, but it works 95% plus. In fact, I might be higher than that. And the question and the statement is, let me see if I understand you. And those 7 words, I just, like even in the most intense scenarios that I've been in my life, if I remember to use them, everybody stops. Everyone stops because, of course, that's why they're monologuing in the first place, is because they're trying to be understood. And so if you signal that, it's like everyone pauses. Okay, well, let's see if you do. Now, that's not quite the same as hey, it's my turn. But
it's part of the acknowledgement, Greg. It's part of the.
Okay. It's not a pivot because it's not my turn.
Yeah, but it's a great intro to the acknowledgement. I may steal it. I think it's great. But the pivot so somebody says yes, and then they're on a roll. They just keep going. And they're giving you a lecture.
The pivot is my turn.
How do you get in? Okay.
Yes.
And most people, 90% of the time, people will say yes when you say. Can I share some thoughts on that? Most of the time, they will say yes.
Yeah, can I share some thoughts on that? I love that.
Yeah,
and then you're saying the next skill then is
perspective.
Yeah,
so
it's perspective.
We
it's
call
now
them
it's
LAP.
my turn.
We call them LAP: listen, acknowledge, pivot, and offer perspective.
Okay.
And the acronym is for David Lapp, who is one of the 2 Davids who co-founded Brave Angels. So I get to call it whatever I like. So the LAP skills: listen, acknowledge, pivot, and offer perspective. And the perspective is, again, it's the standard stuff. We didn't make these things up. I statements rather than truth statements. This is how I see this. This is how I came to see it. So maybe there's a story in there. This is the sources I've accessed for as opposed to this is how it is. So my understanding of what's happening with the global warming is that it's human caused and it's going to get worse, or whatever. And that then I feel some urgency about it. Okay. And so as opposed to the earth is warming. Okay. And unless we do something now, we're sunk. The I statement puts me in it, and it invites you to share your own perspective. Now, what we say is you can still be strong in this. It's not just saying, well, I just happen to think. I mean, you may have strong views on this, but you say them with an I statement. Now, and you also, at this point, you try to pivot in, you try to get in something you agree with. So I agree that the changes have to be done in a way that are sustainable, that we're not going to crash our economy. Because I'm completely with you there. We have to figure it's a tough situation we're in, how to implement this. Okay. And I'm with you there. Can't be done foolishly. However, I really feel a sense of urgency about this. So you can see what I did. I'm speaking from me. I am saying, and including the urgency I feel, and I folded in something like you made sense to me on this part of what you said. I'm with you there, and so as going forward, so it's an invitation to further conversation, but it's not dogmatic. and I'm in it as a person.
Mm. Yeah, I love that. A phrase that I found useful is well, my story for this is,
Yeah,
and including, well, my story, my story for you is, is this. This is what I think. This is how I'm. Like that actual phrase, my story for this, my story for you. We're familiar with the idea that stories are part of the noise in our head and so on, but that's a turn of phrase that I found to be quite natural. Once is adopted. Okay, I love this idea. Right, you're agreeing. You're in your perspective. You're agreeing with things. You're signaling receptivity. You're signaling.
You're telling a story. So part of it is the way we get story in there. If you have a personal story that connects to this, like around the policing thing, people will talk. I have a police officer in my family, and this kind of So humanize with I statements and stories.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I love this too. Now, you said something earlier that I really don't want to miss. I'm not great at this. The exit skills. That's good. Like I struggle with the exit. So give us your best exit skills.
Yeah. So we talk about soft, medium, and hard exits. Okay. And the soft exit would be just something like, yeah. So appreciate our conversation on this, and now I'd like to go back to the ball game or something. Just right. A medium exit would be, it seems like we're just sort of, escalating here a bit. It seems like, we're not getting anywhere at the moment. And so why don't we let it lie? A third, harder would be, I care about you, and I don't want to hurt our relationship. And so this conversation, I don't think it's going that well. So I like to let it lie. Okay. So those are some examples of exit skills. And you notice the key in there is I'm not labeling your behavior. Even if I'm thinking that you are being dogmatic
obnoxious
and argumentative.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that. I'm characterizing our conversation is kind of been going off the rails a little bit here, and I just like to, let it go for now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. I love this idea of this the soft. You say soft, medium, hard. Is that what it was?
Yeah.
And the difference between soft, medium, and hard. I mean, I get the idea that it has a different feeling to it, but what's really different in the intent or in the formula for it?
Yeah. So when you get to the hard exit, you are not going to go on with this conversation. With the other two, somebody might say, "Yeah, I'm getting kind of upset here. I actually enjoy our conversation. So that's, I'm sorry I called you a socialist, or I called you a Trump cult. That was out of line. I'm sorry I did that. So, okay. For the hard exit, you probably tried the others, and you're just declaring the conversation is over, and you do not go on with the conversation.
Mm-hmm. You have to stick to that.
You have to stick to it. And what we say is, and this comes back to my couples therapy work, okay? If the other person will always say one more thing. If you were to say to your spouse, this conversation isn't very productive any longer. I know I'm getting angry. Can we just take a time out? They're going to say one more thing. They're not going to say, "Oh, well, thank you for pointing that out, and I'm going to shut up now." They're going to say one more thing. Okay. And so you let the person say their one more thing, and then just say, "Okay, so we're done," and you exit physically if you have to, or hang up or whatever. But so the hard is that you are declaring this is over. You're giving them the dignity of a response to that, but then you're finished.
I love the acknowledgement there will be another comment. I love that, knowing that, baking that into your own expectation. Your exit includes their last comment, and move. and do what you said you're going to do. Now, as I'm listening to all of this, one of the things that is striking to me is how much structure and learning is being required to be able to foster mutual understanding, breakthroughs, and so on. And my mind goes in sort of two directions with this. One, I want you to ideally get to the second, is just a story of success around this. A specific story of how this is, you've seen some people change, or a person, and so on, right? So let's maybe that's second. But the first question, I'm thinking, well, right now in the United States, 1 in 5 people admit to having stopped talking to a family member or a friend because of polarization. Okay, so that's one of my whys behind this, because what do you do if it becomes 1 in 2? What do we do then? But these conversations, these day-to-day conversations we're having with people, don't have the benefit of that external facilitator. And if they're in close family relationships or even in a business environment, they're often high stakes, in some ways higher stakes than the red-blue conversation, although that people get plenty animated about that. I'm not trying to minimize that. But I'm asking, how do we, what do you advise people to do in order to structure a braver conversation?
Yeah.
In their normal world. Yeah.
So a key principle that I haven't mentioned yet comes into play, and that is, don't try to change somebody's mind about something that's important to them. Let go of trying to convince them. We have a families and politics workshop where we teach these attitudes and skills related to family relationships. And we say, again, the prime directive there is never try to change a family member. You can only change yourself. And so a key reason we get in trouble and don't use the skills we normally have is that in these conversations, we get activated and we try to get the other person to change.
Yes.
We do some version of, can't you see the obvious truth that I have and you don't?
Yes.
And that fails 100% of the time. So a big part of it is taking a breath and going into these conversations with curiosity about what the other person's saying. And if there's an opening to express our view, but to let go of success being, they're going to see, geez, I never thought of it that way. I've been wrong all these years.
Okay, so I love that. There seems like there's a corollary to that, because one of the reasons I think we can get so focused on controlling the outcome is so that we are not controlled.
Yeah. Good point.
And okay, so let me just give you a hypothetical situation. Imagine that you have people that have been raised in a home that there was an unspoken idea like this: what I say must be treated as the truth or else. Right? That dominant assumption. And the or else could be any number of things, right? Maybe in some families there's going to be explosive anger. People are going to be storming off. In other homes it would be extreme silence and silence treatment, and that could go on for hours or days, depending on the dynamics. But in the end, it is, truth isn't really independent. What I say must be given as the truth or else. Now, if that were true, suddenly every interaction wouldn't just be, I need to persuade you. It's like truth itself is malleable. I can't hold on to the truth unless you accept what I say as truth. So it's all about force and power. And so I'm curious, like with that scenario, yes, okay, I can imagine stepping into the role, okay, my goal isn't to change you, but how to maintain one's own sense of truth in the conversation and not simply adopt and capitulate, to the other.
So beautiful. In our Families and Politics workshop, because this is most apt to come up in families, we talk about the various family roles, and you're describing the gladiator, the one who is there to set everybody straight about what's true. And we talk about the defender, the sniper, the peacemaker. We have these various roles. And so the skills we teach are about how to deal with the gladiator. And the first set of skills is how to create boundaries and not get into conversations you are convinced are not going to be productive.
Okay. For example?
Saying, I hear you. This is something really important to you. It's not something I want to get into right now. In other words, I'm not going to engage you on the content of what you're saying, even though all kinds of flashes are going off in my mind. I am politely declining to get into the conversation. And then if they keep going, you repeat that. And if they keep going, you do your exit skills. But you don't attack them. What we say is you neither be a victim nor an attacker. And emotionally, this is a theme from family therapy, is a differentiation of self. To accept that the gladiator, this person, is who they are and how they are in the world, and they do not have to change in order for me to feel I can have emotional equilibrium. But this is part of the family thing. Like, I put up with this, in my head, my whole childhood, and there you are again. Even if I don't say it, if emotionally I'm activated, then I have to get you to change so I can be emotionally self-regulated. That's the trap. So the prior work, and we have people do this in the workshop, is what is particularly hard for me in dealing with the family gladiator, and how do I prepare myself emotionally to keep centered, even though they're not changing. And then the behavioral skill is the boundary setting skill of declining to engage in a conversation which the last 450 times has not gone well.
Okay, so, I mean, implied in what you're saying is you don't engage in dialogue with gladiators. I mean, that seems to be
no. The first set of skills is how you have a choice.
Right. Is just to know you do have that choice.
You have that choice.
To feel empowered. I don't have to do that conversation.
And it may not be the day. It may not be the time. It may not be the setting. It may be in front of other people. If I'm going to go, then you use the lap skills. Like, the first thing you say is an acknowledgement. So, Uncle Fred, let me see if using your words, let me see if I'm getting what you're saying. Okay. You could even disarm them by starting with an agreement. I completely agree with you that the last 4 presidents have completely overstepped their bounds, Democrats and Republicans, with these executive orders. I completely agree with you about that. Oh, wasn't expecting that. Okay. So you can use the skills if you choose to enter the conversation, you can use these skills.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Got it. So you're really saying the boundary is just, you don't have to have the conversation. This is how to kind of avoid that if you want to, for healthy, for the health of the relationship and your own psyche and so on. If you do enter the conversation, you're using the lap skills. There's not a new set of skills, a different set with Gladiator. It just takes more emotional self-regulation to be able to do that.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's an interesting. I mean, there's more to explore there, but not in maybe in this moment. Now to the question I sort of set up before, maybe I can frame it this way: what story best captures your hope that people can change even in the hardest situations?
It's the story that deep down, most of us know we are interdependent, that we need each other to have flourishing lives and a flourishing country. And that most people do not want this division. There are some who benefit from it, but most people do not want this. Just like most families, deep down, want to be loving and accepting of one another. I think most Americans want to get past this. That's the story.
And let me ask you sort of I suppose it's a legacy question. I mean, you have, I mean, this is a very impressive life story, right? Pull a few that we haven't covered so far, right? A Parenting Book of the Year award in 2000. You've got written 20 books, of course. We haven't mentioned that. Fellow of the National Council on Family Relations 2004. Lifetime Outstanding Community Service Award. You've got Lifetime Achievement Award in American Family Therapy. You've started the Doherty Relationship Institute with your daughter Elizabeth, if I'm understanding that correctly. And we could go on, right? So with that as sort of, just some of the highlights, I'm sure there are others I know there are others that I haven't just covered. But the question would be, when people look back on your work decades from now, what do you hope they say about the way you helped people reconnect?
Well, that's a big question. He believed in people's desires and motivations to connect and to have to have agency in their lives and have communion and connection with others. That he believed in that deeply, and his work was to try to create containers, processes in which people could bring that to the fore.
There's a beautiful combination: the agency and connection, both the duality that we need. Bill, thank you so much for being on the podcast and in conversation with us.
This was a pleasure. I felt like I was with my therapist here. This was great.
Listen, for everybody listening or watching this, you know the drill. 3 questions, right? What is one thing that stood out to you? Now, maybe it was something Bill said explicitly, his actual words, or maybe it was something else that you felt, something that just touched you, that was a signal that you got. What is one thing you can do immediately? What is one of these phrases or one of these skills that you can try in the very next conversation that you have? Literally, the next one. And who is someone that you can share this conversation with now that this conversation has come to a close? Thank you, really, thank you for listening.